Hello, I'm Jenny Maloney, Strategic Accounts Manager at Bayer Vegetable Seeds. It is so great to host you today. As we continue to celebrate the UN's International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, Bayer has convened a virtual panel of experts from across the US food chain. We invite you to follow along as we explore the journey of a seed and the resulting produce across the value chain, giving a glimpse into growing practices, marketing to consumers, and focusing on how we increase consumption of fruits and vegetables. Bayer, including the brands Seminis and DeRuyter, have long provided industry-leading solutions to help vegetable growers in both open field and protected environments. We're committed to providing the highest quality seeds and cutting-edge solutions to help growers face today's challenges, while providing amazing tasting produce to consumers. Together, we can grow healthier businesses and a healthier world. Today, we are joined by Lori Taylor to moderate our session. Lori Taylor is the founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, she sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores throughout the United States. And today, she is fully focused on working with the produce supply chain, media, and government to increase fresh produce access and consumption in the US and around the globe. Lori, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jenny. It's great to see you. It's great to be with the team at Bayer, all of our wonderful attendees and the panelists today. Y'all are in for a great treat. And you know, it's been such a popular adage, farm to fork. And I really appreciate Bayer in challenging us all to really think about seed to plate. And that's exactly what we're going to discuss today. It's wonderful to be here. So thank you so much to Bayer and everyone for joining in to celebrate the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. We're really obviously stoked about that at the Produce Moms, and it's great to be here today with all of these different stakeholders to talk about that common thread. So our very first guest today is David Bell. David is with the Longvine Growing Company. I've personally known David for a while, and it's great to reconnect with him today. David is responsible for marketing across all of the Longview Growing Company, their group of companies, and is based in Vancouver, British Columbia. David has more than 20 years of marketing and sales management experience in consumer packaged goods, including the last 10 years fully focused on produce at Longvine. So David, welcome to our panel and event today. We are really glad you're here. That was wonderful. So thank you for that intro video. We're going to have David come on. And as a gentle reminder, everyone, this is an open forum. We welcome you to submit any questions that you have. Please utilize the Q&A function. It's a little button right there on your Zoom screen to submit your questions. And David, thank you for that wonderful intro video. Welcome to the panel. We're really glad you're here. I know you have some other prepared remarks.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Great to see you on Zoom, that is, of course. And really happy to be here and thankful for Bayer to invite me to be a part of this panel. So with that, I think we're on a limited time. We want to make sure there's lots of time for questions, and I'm excited to share a little bit more about the Longvine Growing Co. and how we grow our fruits and vegetables, and ultimately how they get to the consumers' plates and into their bellies. All right, can I see the slides, please? There we go. Okay, let's advance to the next slide. So at the heart of Longvine Growing Co., we're a greenhouse growing operation, and not just specific to us, but really we view greenhouse growing as the beautiful art and science, that precision together of technology and the passion of a grower and understanding plants, listening to the plants, and really focusing on the best outcomes for the products that we grow. And specific to Longvine Growing Co., our core products are greenhouse grown tomatoes, bell peppers, and cucumbers of all sizes. Please advance. A little bit about who we are, and it's a starting point for us is that we're plant people. We really believe in our products. It doesn't mean we're exclusive to plants in what we feel we need for our diets, but at the core of our business is growing and bringing fresh vegetables, high nutrient products into consumers' hands. Part of our core tenet is focused on sustainability, and I'll touch on that a little bit further, but also showing on the map here, we're headquartered in Mona, Utah, where we have our flagship farm. It's a 28-acre greenhouse tomato farm, which is quite a unique facility as it's located next to existing natural gas power plants. So we're able to take the waste heat and CO2 from that power plant on the national energy grid and duct it on into our facility. So we're able to heat and grow tomatoes through the cold Utah winters. Please advance. So I did want to focus on sustainable farming as well as showcase our brand a little bit. As Lori mentioned, I've been working for Longvine Growing Co. for the last 10 years. However, it's in the last year that we've rebranded as Longvine, and it's giving us an opportunity to refresh who we are as a company and focus more on today's consumer. Our previous iteration of our brand had been in the marketplace for over 9 years and was really it was designed for a different consumer, and there's a way we can speak more direct to consumers. And I know coming up in the presentation with Johnna, we've got some great consumer insights, and a lot of that aligns to where we got to with Longvine. So as far as sustainable farming, of course, there's the words on the screen that you can all read, but it really comes down to we need, especially as growers, to justify our investment in green. We know it's the right thing to do, but for it to be truly sustainable, we need to have business practices that will allow us to focus on sustainability, but also on profitability, as the only true sustainable way we can bring our produce to consumers is if we continue to operate at a strong level. Please advance. So many of our sustainable practices, some good visuals on screen of inside the canopy of the greenhouse. We see very simple, what I like to call analog solutions, like that yellow sticky tape on the picture on the bottom right. That's part of our integrated pest management program. And I refer to it as analog, as it's quite literally the bugs are attracted to yellow, and it's sticky tape. So we're able to reduce pest pressures within the greenhouse with a very simple format, as well as then utilize our scouts that go through the greenhouse in order to view what sort of pests are on that tape and understand what's going on. In the center picture, we see the bumblebee. All of our tomatoes and peppers are naturally pollinated with bumblebees. We bring in hives into the greenhouse environment, and they operate very effectively. And then the next image you see there is just a close-up on the drip irrigation, which allows us to control our irrigation, reduce the amount of water, and I can speak to that in a little bit as well. And even more important within that irrigation is the closed loop system. So there's no ag runoff. Any of the water that the plants don't take up, the fertilized water, is run back through and recirculated. So we don't lose that fertilizer, and we don't contribute to ag runoff. Next slide, please. A couple highlights of our sustainability program. There's many things, but in a short amount of time, as just spoken to, water conservation. So over 90% of our wastewater is recycled. So that's whatever's not brought up by the plants. And not only does that allow us to reduce the water used, which is an important asset, but it also allows us to reduce the amount of fertilizer we're using, which is a chemical-based product that goes into the growing of conventional produce. And then the picture on your right, harnessing waste energy, that is a viewpoint from the Rocky Mountain power plant that is adjacent to our greenhouse. You can see directly off the stack, there's very large, the picture doesn't do it justice, the size of that piping. I'm over 6 feet tall and could stand in the middle of that very thick piping. But it brings that waste heat and CO2 into our energy building that then gets deployed into the greenhouse. Please advance. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the tomato journey, focus on one of our crops. And really, this is the story from seed to plate. So it starts with selecting seed and working with seed companies such as Bayer to find the right varietals for the various locations we grow, the various product specs that our customers like Safeway have that need to be focused on in order for truly for us to grow, harvest, and ship and deliver into a store the perfect product, whether that's a product focused purely on flavor, more premium, or something that is focused on being an excellent product at a good value, so we can increase consumption by consumers that are looking for that value with a large family at home. So the journey starts with that seed selection. From that, each plant is propagated, and it's not in fact only one seed, because all of these tomato plants that you see in the picture have been grafted. So they come with a hardy rootstock, and then you've got the fruit-bearing stock variety, and that combination gets grafted in a propagation specialty greenhouse, fuses together, and what we get is the advantage of disease resistance of the rootstock, strength and power, but we get the output of the fruit, which is going to be nutritious, it's going to be flavorful, and it's going to ripen up and please consumers, which is what we need. So 8 weeks within a propagation house, those plants are then put on a truck and trucked to our grow house. In the case of the image you see, that's in our Utah greenhouse in Mona, and those plants get planted on coconut husk blocks. So we're not growing in soil, we're growing in a rock wool medium, and then onto coconut husk. Gives a great root structure and is a compostable material when we're finished with it. And it's going to be another 8 to 10 weeks of of crop work before our first harvest. All of our products are picked by hand. They're then sorted for quality as they're being harvested, brought into our pack house, run through for quality and any additional packaging, be it a clamshell of tomatoes or any other type of bundled solution. And from there, it's palletized and it goes out to our retail partners and into their distribution centers, where it's again checked for quality and then ultimately distributed to the local store, where the produce team on the floor is the final quality check before it gets to the consumer. Please advance. Apologize if I ran through that very quickly, but really wanted to focus on the opportunity to answer questions and listen to the fellow panelists. Thank you very much.
Well, no need to apologize on that. You did a great job, David, and the slides were wonderful. You know, I've been to the farm in Nogales, so I can personally vouch for all of the sustainability and also the magnitude of that one photo in particular that showed the operation in that big machinery smokestack thing. I don't remember what you called it, but yeah, it's quite impressive. So keep up the great work, and please, everyone, reminder, drop your questions in the Q&A. I see we have some coming through, so thank you for that. Please keep them coming. With that, I think it's time to introduce our second guest. So David so well represented the grower point of view in the seed to plate journey, and now we are going to bring in that retailer point of view. So I'm very pleased to welcome Chad Street. He's with the Albertsons company, and Chad, we're so excited to bring you onto this panel. And a fun fact for all those who are with us today, Chad and I actually worked together way back in the day at Indie Fruit. So it's great to reconnect with him as well. The produce industry is this tight, small knit community, everyone, never burn a bridge, right? But Chad currently oversees the P&L for 6 of the 12 ACI divisions for both produce and floral, and is the corporate category lead for apples, citrus, tomatoes, dry veg, which does include hothouse, grapes, asparagus, wet veg, mushrooms, and pineapple. So again, at the Albertsons company. And Chad, we're really glad you're here. I know that you have some prepared remarks as well, so welcome.
Thank you, Lori. You know, I remember telling her a long time ago, just remember all of us little people. When she moves on, becomes a big deal, and proud to say that's definitely become the reality. So Thank you to everyone who invited me to be a part of this. We really appreciate it, being able to collaborate between the seed and grower communities, along with, obviously myself on the retail side. Really, really excited. Us at the Albertsons companies, we kind of live by three phrases, if you will, that kind of oversee everything that we do. The first being flavor profile, first and foremost, the customer experience, and then partnerships. And with how our business is continuing to become more diversified through e-commerce, customer pickup, meal solutions, and food service, the collaboration between our three facets of the business has never been as important as it is now, especially moving forward. So I do have a couple slides I can present. All right. First, obviously every year for us is the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. So it's a great title, a great slogan, and we're grateful to be a part of it. Next slide, please. All right, so for us at Albertsons, we kind of identify our model as somewhat of a hybrid, right? So our goal is to be locally great, nationally strong. And kind of what that means for us specifically is, how do we stay nimble? How do we kind of, support every one of those facets of which I kind of mentioned earlier? And how do we kind of keep things different and not so cut and dry from store to store? So really what we focus on is where we're able to do it, really kind of work the cross merchandising in together, work your colors, make them pop, and kind of really draw those customer eyes, to those sets and displays and all these great items that we're presenting from a fresh perspective when they walk through our door. We have the ability to stay nimble and keep things different from store to store, from certain perspectives and areas. Next slide, please. But at the same time, we are a big national company that wants to operate as such where it makes sense. So we try to find that balance of, what we can do to stay different, but kind of what we can put in place from a expectation perspective for our certain teams, where we can, align some of the processes. So what you kind of see in front of you is two different stores on two different sides of the country of kind of what our expectation is for certain things that allow us to remain nimble in other areas of the business. We have a great team that works very closely together, and it wouldn't be possible without that real team mentality and team focus on how we pursue things. And relying on our grower base, relying on these seed breeding companies to continue to, produce those items that our consumers want is our biggest focus. And whatever we can do to partner with those teams is our biggest priority. And really, that's all I have from an ACI perspective, as far as just kind of our quick snapshot of who we are, who we want to be, and who we want to align with.
Well, thank you so much, Chad. That was a great intro. And don't worry, we're going to put you in the hot seat again here soon. And because people are putting questions in the Q&A. So thank you so much to everyone for that. The retailer just has such a tremendous and important role in how all of us are able to celebrate that International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, to your point, on a daily basis, on an annual basis. But it is so exciting for us all that the UN has made this a marquee and focus for their efforts in 2021. I think that if the pandemic taught America anything, it should be let's eat more fruits and veggies and volume and variety. So thank you so much for those intro remarks, and we look forward to bringing you back on here with the Q&A. All right, so our next panelist is Johnna Parker, and I actually just met Johnna through this wonderful event. So thank you to Bayer for connecting the two of us. She's brilliant. She's with IRI Fresh. She's been an innovator in the fresh food space for nearly 2 decades, driving the evolution of consumer-centric decision-making and big data analytics throughout the perimeter. Johnna joined IRI in 2016, and she leads their Fresh Center of Excellence, focusing on solution enhancement, industry relationships, and client consultation across suppliers and retailers. So an incredibly important point of view and stakeholder with the discussion that we're fostering here today. Most recently, Johnna spearheaded developing IRI's integrated fresh solutions for sales and shopper tracking across total food and beverage. And Johnna, I hope I don't botch this award title because I know it's a biggie. You're an award finalist for business technology. It's the 2020 Sia Cody Award. It's like winning an Emmy or an Oscar, folks. This is a big, big deal. So the stats that Johnna is going to share with us today, they are all US based. I had an opportunity to preview the amazing slides that she's put together for the group yesterday. And please pay attention. You're going to love this. There's so much information in this. Johnna, welcome, and we're really glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Lori, and thank you, everyone. It's fun as the data geek to get to hear the perspective from the supplier, also from the great work that Chad's doing at retail. What all clicked together for you is what consumers are thinking, feeling, doing today. So if you wouldn't mind pulling up the slides. One of the things that is why we had to build a new solution is, for the most part, the produce industry has lagged, well, I should say olive fresh, has lagged behind center of store frozen and non-food and beverages, which were much more savvy marketers and very interested in consumer-centric decision-making. But we've caught up and we've learned a lot, and I hope to share some of that with you today. So next slide, please. So first off, I would be remiss to talk about anything in the store without really setting the sight on what everything that's happened over the last 2 years has changed about how we buy anything food and beverage, but you'll especially see this in produce. Thing number one, first and foremost, is we did and are still actually eating more meals at home. What the pandemic changed for American society, as we all probably know, is that all across the country, people who had previously relied almost exclusively on food service for at least a period didn't have that food service piece happening. What really ended up happening then, because we were more homebound, home-centric, and not as social, is we made less trips to the store. But still today, even when we make a trip to the store, we're mission focused. Now, so often in this industry, we think about that mission being, I need to solve my weekly grocery shop. But increasingly and interestingly, as an opportunity in produce, it can also mean I'm having friends and family over. It can mean I'm going back to work and I need solutions for the office after I've been home. It can be, I really want to change up my routine. So that mission could be a tremendous amount of opportunity if we see ourselves as solution centers. There's also, of course, new and infinite ways to shop. I'll cover that extensively in this. But I think when we talk about the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, we need to remember that our merchandising and experiences with fruits and vegetables isn't relegated to that beautiful produce display anymore at the corner store. It can actually be a digital experience. And I'll talk about who that is and why it's a huge opportunity. Last and most importantly, is all of this means that where we can buy fresh foods, and especially fruits and vegetables, has changed. You can buy fruit now at Starbucks. You can buy vegetables at a gas station. That is awesome and should only be something we embrace, but we have to recognize in any part of this industry, we're competitors. How do we become companions and folks who are adjacent to all of this? Okay, next slide, please. I'm gonna go kind of fast, who's ever clicking, so bear with me. By the way, all of our slides that I present from IRI will be available for download to everyone after this conversation. The biggest thing I think about everything as it relates to food in 2021 is we really haven't even yet internalized the implications of what 2020 has done. It wasn't just a disruptor for Q2 of 2020. We're still seeing those ripple effects in terms of people eating at home more, acquiring cooking skills, really thinking more about what they're putting in their bodies as having rippling effects for the rest of this decade at least. All this should favor fruits and vegetables, but as I'll show you in a minute, to date, we're kind of okay because we still haven't internalized the consumer-focused implications of what all this change has meant. Next slide, please. So let's look at the stats. As we look across total food and beverage in the US retail market, so not food service here, but everything from a club store to a local grocery store to a discount store as well, you see that fresh foods is gaining share because it's growing faster year to date in 2021 than grocery, frozen, refrigerated, and dairy, and adult beverages in cumulative. However, When we look at where produce, and I also highlighted deli prep foods, because increasingly we're seeing that in that deli space, fruits and vegetables, especially salads and snacking options, are right there merchandised. What you see in produce is we grew 1.5% in sales year to date, and we're 13% more sales than we were in 2019. All those numbers sound amazing and we should be pleased with them. However, our 13% since 2019 is actually behind the meat department and almost 10 points behind the frozen department. And by department, I mean everything in frozen. Frozen veggies did pretty well, but I think where frozen veggies have an advantage on fresh veggies today is they're easy to prepare, easy to shop, and easy to see what to do with them. So again, produce is doing well, but maybe not some of the ways that other parts of the store are gaining exponentially. Next slide, please. I'm just checking my phone here because we have a group text. I want to make sure everyone can hear me. It looks like you can. Okay. Really quick, ultimately, when it comes to consuming anything right now fresh, we are doing well above on a monthly basis the sales that we were doing pre-COVID. So even though we are not at the sales rates that we were back in March, April, and May, and why you see those negatives is in March, April, May of 2020, people ran to the store and they stocked up on a lot of things, and that favored everything. The longstanding effect of last year's disruptions is that we are routinely selling more food than we were in 2019 on a monthly basis, even now sitting here in October with most of the nation vaccinated, with most of the nation returning open to normal. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for total, I should say, vegetables and produce across the store? This slide now just looks at fruits and vegetables, and the red showcases fresh items sold in the produce department. Shelf stable is the light gray bar that is canned or basically shelf stable, right? So canned or bottled or little cupped plastic containers of fruits and vegetables sold in the grocery aisle. And then last but not least, in dark gray is the frozen sector of the store, fruits and vegetables. And what is so interesting about the roller coaster of total food is that, yes, as we could have predicted in Q2 of 2020 and Q3 of 2020, when lockdowns were really rampant, we saw quite a bit more sales go to other parts of the store, maybe than we saw in fresh. Even at points this year, though, fresh has roared back, and specifically around May, June, July, and August. This summer, fresh produce was in demand, and fruit was actually even more in demand than ever. Things like seasonal offerings and really trumpeting the fact that we had an excellent growing season in certain fruits. Also, you saw retailers really position themselves well for outdoor grilling and small occasions. And actually, consumers just bought this stuff, even if we didn't tell them it was in season or if it was good for grilling. Consumer demand is still very high, especially for fresh fruits and vegetables. In fact, we're slightly outpacing what we were in 2019 in terms of share of fresh. But we want the overall total to grow. So while fresh is growing, we're actually seeing year to date that frozen and shelf stable produce is down year over year. We don't want this to be a competition across the aisles. We believe strongly that all across the store, there's a reason for each temperature state. Next slide, please. Let's dive into more of the actual types of foods that are growing within fresh, and you're going to see the favors that come through on fruits and vegetables. So first off, in 2019, the number one fastest growing pre-pandemic product in food was fresh snacking and salad vegetables. That includes tomatoes, cucumbers, mushrooms, and carrots. Those things that work well in a recipe, but actually work really, really well to have on hand as a healthy, good for you snack. Furthermore, we also saw fresh cooking vegetables be another strong growth category, especially as people explore plant-based diets. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that plant-based doesn't mean substitute to most consumers. It could mean grilling half of a cauliflower head. It could mean mixing mushrooms in with your burger and cooking vegetables. All of those trends pre-2019 or pre-2020 pandemic were in favor. As we got into the pandemic, staples became essential for us to feed our family every day when we weren't going out as much. Common fruit like berries, absolutely berries, but also bananas and apples, did extremely well during 2020's pandemic year. Again, fresh snacking and salad vegetables, again, another great year on top of another great year. And again, root vegetables like potatoes and squash also did well because of their storage capability and their versatility to round out a meal when you weren't going out as much. And again, fresh cooking vegetables still showing up. Now, 2021 is a little different, right? We were lapping a year when it was all about comfort food and stock up versus convenience and exploration and premiumization. So what you see in the 2021 year-to-date growth is very anchored on those already prepared convenient items. I will tell you, and I'll show you in a minute, all of the things that were in 2020 are still well outselling their pre-pandemic. But in terms of new growth, we're seeing a lot more trends related to convenience, especially as they relate to salads and side dishes. People want to eat their veggies, but how are we going to make it easier for them by having recipes or already turnkey fresh solutions available, let's say in your local grocer? Next slide, please. So here I rank for you the year-to-date 2021 top categories by product type in the fresh produce department. Berries is a juggernaut. And in my now 2 decades working in the fresh foods industry, berries has consistently outpaced added absolute dollar growth. So why berries, you might be asking yourself. They are versatile, they are fresh, of course, but they're also so loaded with feel-good stories behind them. So on the right, you see I put in a picture of someone adding berries to their bowl of grain or granola, but you could eat berries for breakfast, lunch, and now as they're being added to salads to dinner as well. One day you could buy raspberries, the next day strawberries. That category has absolutely become a poster child of what's happening right when we market and consider the consumer first. Tomatoes, obviously Dave shared thoughts with you on that category, doing extremely well. Look at the actual absolute dollar growth at retail for some of these items. $5 billion more added since 2019, $2.9 billion in tomatoes. We also are seeing tremendous growth across many, many of the staple categories in the store and huge selling item numbers. Now, next slide, please. A lot of that, though, is anchored in what we call fresh whole marketing. That means it's a whole item marketed to a consumer as something you have to do something with. So the example in this picture, of course, looks more at meat, but hear me out here. For example, a whole head of cauliflower or a whole bag of lettuce or a whole apple would be what's appearing in the produce department in fresh whole. And that is obviously the anchor. It's the way people have been used to buying fruits and vegetables for at least a century, let alone the decade. But what we're seeing increasingly add share, the white numbers, is products with one step of added value. This, of course, in the meat department means marinating, but in produce, that means cutting up the apple. It could mean washing the lettuce. It could mean including both apples or including different types of berries, right, in a package. That added value versus having the consumer save even one step is a big opportunity. Next up, fresh meal and salad kits. I get asked about this all the time. Tremendous growth, but still very small. And why a lot of the growth in kits is small is because people sometimes want to curate their own meal and not have you pick out, in this case, the lettuce, the toppings, and the dressing. So we're seeing also emerge increasingly again is convenient meals and snacks. When folks want to sometimes have already something prepared for them and already merchandised or presented as a solution for a meal or a celebration, that is really gaining favor. Thinking about this the way a consumer does, solving a product, is a good way to think about the future of the produce industry versus thinking about how are we going to sell more apples versus more Brussels sprouts. Next slide. So one of the most important recent learnings that we've had in 2021 is that produce is the most valuable player in the store. So I studied baskets, so transactions, right? When you go to the grocery store, what's all in your basket? And what are the things that appear in 10% or more baskets across all types of retail food outlets? Fresh bananas, fresh berries, tomatoes, onions, and lettuce are in 10% of every basket. Not all together, keep in mind, but they each individually have about 10% of all baskets. And if that number sounds low, Keep in mind, the only other things that make it not on this list are things like beer and bottled water are also on this list, and milk. But produce has the most categories or products of any department in the store in terms of frequency. When we look at products that are increasing frequency the fastest this year, cucumbers and peppers pop up. All in all, produce's role in setting the stage for whether it be price or why you should shop at a certain retailer over another is anchored in produce. It is essential that this department, more than any other in the store, is really top of mind when it comes to retail. Next slide. So the other piece we don't talk enough about is beyond price, right? Most of the folks think about, if I want to sell more of something, I discount it. But actually, we're seeing that premiumization is a big driver for consumers today in 2021. People want to feed many, so they look at multiple sizes and look for values across bigger items, or even just knowing how many mouths will this feed, how many servings. But beyond that, they want to reward themselves. It's hard out there this year. It's scary. It's become increasingly scary. How can I feel good about something? An example in produce could be using fresh herbs versus dried to dress up a recipe. Also, you find people who want to impress others. We're gathering again. And so adding something like an idea to, again, grill a whole or roast something and really impress someone with your cooking skills is very paramount for consumers. They also want to trust the attributes of the product. I loved hearing Dave talk about greenhouse growing, and I've been on many a tour too, as probably some of you. But the difference is that a lot of consumers don't know how great it is about greenhouse growing. Those are the kind of attributes they want to trust and will pay more for. And ultimately, fresh produce, even though it's more expensive in the store than, let's say, canned or frozen, is viewed as a value because it's cheaper than buying something out of home or another outlet. Next slide. I'm going to go pretty quick here at the end so we make sure to leave time for questions. Ultimately, there's competition for fresh fruits and vegetables everywhere. So we can keep this, move past the slide. And increasingly, we're seeing consumers turn to online shopping. Now, produce has been one of the last bastions of grocery retail to really get a focus online, even though it's so plentiful in frequent grocery trips. A lot of that is because of perception. Today, as of the Produce Marketing Association's work earlier this year, 23% of shoppers are open to buying produce online. Of those who've tried it, 67% would buy again. But there's actually 76% who've never tried it. And among that group, there's actually several who are not open to doing it. One of the biggest barriers we'll talk about in the next slide, thank you, is why they're buying online is the convenience. Right now in New York City, there are multiple places where you can get your groceries delivered to you in 15 minutes. If you're out of the cilantro you need to make fresh salsa on taco night, you can now order that if it's available on one of these grocery delivery apps. Yet we found that most produce is not only not available, it's very hard to find. If you type in broccoli, you might get a page or two of frozen and canned before you even get fresh. People also like the options for either home delivery or picking up at the store. And they like the ease of reordering and sticking to their list. It's not about price. It's not necessarily about being afraid to order anything online. They just want that ease brought to produce. Next slide, please. And when it comes to where and what they want to see online, we definitely see that shoppers who are looking for avocados, apples, berries, and melons would like to see those items online. When it comes to where people have been hesitant to buy online, it's been about fresh cut, grapes, oranges, and tomatoes. I take the fresh cut grapes and tomatoes as they're worried about the fragility of those items and someone else picking them for them. Last but not least, when it comes to people who are most motivated by convenience and want to help find selection, you see the items there. Ensuring that these items are available online and that people can help to find them will open up more opportunity for fresh produce, and online is a real next big opportunity. I believe that is, I have just the summary slide. After this, you wouldn't mind clicking, yep. But let's go ahead and transition into Q&A and discussion because I'd love to hear more from Dave and Chad.
All right, that was wonderful. So see, I told you all that there's so much information We actually in the Q&A chat, thank you to everyone who is, being interactive with us and sharing your questions. One of the top questions is, is this data available? Is there more data available? I can say, and Johnna, the slides that you just shared will be made available. Is that correct?
Absolutely. All of the slides will be available for download, and I included my contact information. But one of the biggest things we've been working on with the Produce Marketing Association, it's now the new IFPA, is ensuring that all of their members have access to information on a monthly basis. So contact me if you need. Obviously, you'll get the deck. If you need more immediately, great. And then more to come in the association industry, much more. Getting this information out is so important, I think, to all of us.
Yes, agreed. All right, so David, we're going to start the Q&A with you. We received a couple great questions about sustainability. So what I'd like to start with is, when thinking about sustainability, is food waste a focus as well for tomato and other plants that do not pass quality checks? Where do these plants that do not pass quality checks end up going?
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. Food waste is it's a huge concern worldwide, and one of the things to impart on all the people viewing today is that we're not manufacturing, we are growing. So there are times when we are growing less than our customers need, and there are times that we are growing more. And that's the delicate balance of make or break in the season, is how can we ensure when we have more product, we're getting it out to the right places in a timely manner so the quality stays where it needs to be. In the cases where we are oversupplied and our partners are oversupplied and consumption is not where we want it in a specific moment in time, we have a number of options. There are various produce repackers that will take product if it's rejected from inbound into a DC of a customer. We have worked with local food banks, of course, for not something that is past good, but if we're just simply in a spot where we cannot get the product out and we know that it will eventually spoil, it's much better to get it into the hands of individuals who could really use those fresh fruits and vegetables. And we often find times, unfortunately, where when one grower is long, all growers are long, and then the food banks are long. And in those situations, we look to farmers that ranch cattle. Often in our Mona, Utah facility, we have some agreements with local farmers. So if there is leftover fruits and vegetables that can't be consumed or are going to need to be dumped, instead of sending them for commercial compost, which is our last option, we work with the local farmers in order to spread the product in their field and allow the animals to feed on it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I know that you answered one of a question about your operations in the Q&A as it relates to the growing cycle. Another operations question that's really in the same wheelhouse of sustainability that came through on the Q&A chat is Longvine a carbon neutral or carbon positive location? How is the business thinking about the sustainability efforts and value proposition this brings to consumers, specifically focused on carbon neutrality?
We are not a carbon neutral company, or we cannot make any claims around that because we don't have enough reporting around it. But it's one of the really it's a very timely question, because certainly in the last 2 years we've seen the focus of our retail partners driven by consumer sentiment to understand much more about our carbon footprint, our greenhouse gas emissions. So there's many partners out there that for the last couple of years have been encouraging growers such as ourselves to report data, start goal setting. That's a program we are on. And for this coming year, one of our corporate goals and stated corporate goals in sustainability is to come out with our own annual reporting that we can share with consumers and with our retail partners, beyond the portal reporting that we do for our retail partners. And it's been that drive. I could admit the drive from our retail partners and that push for us to focus the resources that we need to properly quantify what is our environmental impact, and then subsequently set attainable goals that we can move towards and ultimately achieve to reduce our overall environmental footprint. We've got many programs in the hopper on different sustainable packaging solutions and looking at reductions in plastics and all of those aspects, but we also need to reckon and understand that growing it can be a carbon heavy endeavor, and so that's why we look to do more with less at every opportunity, and find opportunities such as the offtake we have with the natural gas power plant in Mona, where we can take what traditionally we would need to be burning either propane or natural gas in order to heat those greenhouses through the winter, and we're taking something that would be vented out into the out the top of the stacks in order to convert and create food.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Yes. And, as you're talking, more and more data is what is coming to my mind, right, Johnna? Like the data never ends. The data needs with farming never end. So Chad, let's bring you back for a question that came in from Mary Lee Chen. Do you see the organic produce sector growing? I mean, I think everyone that's with us today, we know that organics are hot. They have been for a while. Do you see it growing? How significantly? Do you receive much concern from your shoppers about GMO and conventionally grown produce?
There's a couple points in that I can try to unpack. As far as the GMO portion, we've drawn the line for us as a company as a no GMO operation at this point, based on all of the consumer feedback and research that we've done at this point. As far as organics versus conventional, yeah, absolutely. Organics continue to thrive. They continue to grow. I believe last year, the category overall grew 10% on its own. So, it will continue to do so. It will continue to be an intricate part of our business to support as those consumers, if you watch their basket, probably, tend to spend a little more. So for us, it's always about finding that balance of how do we make as many of our guests happy with what our selection is as possible, while understanding you can't carry every item possible that's available. So our focus is how do we secure the best quality at the right flavor, whether it's organic or conventional. Our focus is the same, but it's about finding that right mix, that right balance to keep our guests satisfied with what their expectations are.
Yeah, very good. And I will say too, from the produce mom's point of view, a lot of it just comes back to education. I mean, if we really think about what's GMO in the produce department, it's very little. Like there is no such thing as a GMO tomato. And I think that is an opportunity that's a whole nother panel discussion, obviously. But I do think that it's important for every stakeholder in the industry to make sure that we are doing our part to educate people on the facts, the truth, and certainly don't skirt around the question. Like we have to answer those questions with truth, fact, science, honesty. So, so that's great. And then, we have another question. As you talk about consumer demands and what consumers want, there's a couple great questions in the chat about socioeconomic status. So, and just like, the inclusivity that I think, that inclusive mindset is something that American consumers are more it's more top of mind for shoppers today. So from the retailer point of view, Chad, is there anything specific that Albertsons is doing to improve affordability and accessibility of fruits and vegetables to all socioeconomic demographics?
Outside of talking to our partners like David and tell them I need a better cost, it's about maintaining that value versus the expectation, right? I think, to Johnna's slides, when you order e-com, there's a perception of what their products need to look like when they receive it. So where we don't settle for playing the, taking a less quality versus a higher quality for cost game. We are very adamant about maintaining the quality to support our customers' expectation. It is our job, and it's a daily battle that we fight, if you will, for making sure that we're passing along that value to our consumer, of which we are going to bat for them each and every day. Right now, it's never been more challenging because whatever you're selling, whether it's on the CPG side of things, whether it's on the grower side of things, inflation is coming. There are expenses being added, whether it's labor, whether it's supplies. We face the same challenges in our stores. At the end of the day, we understand that we are the face of those products at many times, and we are under the microscope, and we take it very seriously to ensure that we're passing along that value or maintaining that value while combating all these outside influences.
Good. And you do know, Chad, that as the retailer, you have a huge responsibility to make sure these growers get good returns, right? Like I'm here as a growers advocate today. I'm gonna beat up a little bit on the retailer here and say, don't beat up too bad on the farmers. Okay, they need their strong returns. And some of the strategies that you implement at point of sale can certainly foster a more profitable farming economy. So you do have a really important stakeholder in this.
Absolutely. We understand wholeheartedly that we cannot be successful without our partners on the growing side of things, the seed breeding side of things.
Right.
If we're not moving in the right direction with the same vision. I think for us specifically, we are very grower partner centric. We understand the challenges. We understand that we need them in order to be successful. This is not a one-sided thing. Although we understand us being retailers like to have our cake and eat it too. We don't throw that out the window, but we also understand that what we are involved in is a true partnership, and we absolutely approach it that way.
Good. All right. And Johnna, we can't talk about socioeconomic trends without having you weigh in on that. So any insights that you would like to share on fresh trends specific to different socioeconomic groups?
Absolutely. One of the most interesting insights we just found out and really studied in the last month or two is that in 2021, especially over the summer, the group who was most increasing their spend on fresh foods over center store foods was lower income. I just want to let that settle in for a minute. Yes, there was certainly a lot more government stimulus money in the economy earlier this year, but what we're increasingly finding is there's a couple big things. You can't unpack any one statement without really understanding the underlying trends. Yes, the government stimulus helped put more money in people's pockets, but we were actually seeing folks still look for things that had a different definition of value. So I'll give the example of, we did see a lot of fruit and vegetable trays, large sizes, being bought by lower income families, which in and of itself can be an $8 to $20 ring at the time. So certainly if you have some stimulus money, that makes that a little bit easier to stomach. But if you think about it, you could have that at a party, do something with it the next day, do something with it the next day, and you bought all these great fruits and vegetables for that. So it actually became a value because they were able to extend that one $10 to $20 ring for multiple situations. Size became the value as opposed to price point. And I think that's increasingly what I'm seeing more and more this year. Obviously, as a group, we're studying the impact of inflation across the store, as we did back in the recession of 2008. And what we consistently see is that consumers will surprise you. Because at the end of the day, buying at grocery retail is still a value in their mind over eating out or having something special delivered, like a farmer's market or a subscription box. And so again, that value comes down to, yes, the price of an item. There is a fragment of people, especially an older generation, typically, who will change stores based on the price of Red Delicious apples. Absolutely true. We call it price elasticity. It happens. But there's also an entirely large set of consumers who, like Chad was saying, have certain must-haves. Some of it's on quality as we would determine it in the industry. Some of it is on size. For example, I think the apple industry has for long worked on different varieties of apples that taste different, but actually they're finding that sizes of the actual apple is also having an impact because a smaller mouth, like a young child, can eat a smaller apple. That's a value then over having to sell a really large apple because the price per pound is lower. This relationship between price and value has so many different layers to it. And I think what Chad was saying was awesome. A retailer like Albertsons that serves many communities of many socioeconomic differences has to have different strategies depending on where they're at. But let's say a discount grocer or a local small format, obviously now there's a lot of retailers who are almost like convenience stores, but they're carrying fresh produce. They might not have the same quality standards, but they just want to get fresh fruits and vegetables on that corner. There's room in this market for anyone to play. And we know there's demand even in food deserts and especially with lower socioeconomic folks.
Thank you for sharing. And to kind of come back to some of our pre-panel discussions, Johnna. I know that we shared a little banter about how I built an entire business around connecting to moms through fresh produce, and you had some great insights. I'd like you to share that at a very high level, because we do have some questions about product innovation that we need to answer before our time is up. So, but it's important that we share those insights that you and I spoke about yesterday with our guests today.
Yeah, just real quick, I think it absolutely, when we think about growth paths for fruits and vegetables, moms and the work Lori's doing and the industry is doing to connect more with young families, it's a huge inflection point of when someone changes their purchasing and they decide to go with more fruits and veggies. But we're actually, as a society, delaying family start and having the lowest rates of children in the home that we've ever had. We also have different types of people who have children, multi-generational families. There are so many other places. And actually, one of the groups we could really benefit from growing would be younger singles, and ensuring that instead of getting their fruits and vegetables from Chipotle, they're actually increasing fresh fruits and vegetable consumption because they want to do it. But we're not always there for them because we're thinking so much about your traditional nuclear family.
Thank you. All right, so lots of great questions. I know that the Bayer team is working on getting the answers that we can posted into the chat. Just so everyone knows, we're going to have a follow-up session that's focused on this theme on the Produce Moms podcast. And as we mentioned previously, a lot of the slides and part in this presentation will be available to the public after we stop the recording today. But we cannot end this without getting some more insight from the grower and the retailer point of view as it relates to innovations. Okay, so the first thing I think that we'll start with, let's start with the grower point of view. How do you decide what's coming next? You know, what are the next big things in the hothouse veg category?
Well, I think it's in sort of going back to some of Chad's previous comments, it really comes down to all of us together. The grower can't do it without the retail partner, and the retail partner and the grower can't do it without the seed company to provide the genetics that are going to be there. And it's a really long development process. So the approach really comes down to trying to understand where the market is. And as Chad spoke about the guests going through their stores, there are many different targets or different markets in there. There are those people that are willing to pay $5-6 for a small little container of the best snacking tomatoes they've ever tasted in their life. And every time they go in that store, they're going to get that premium quality, and they're going to love it, and they're going to tell their friends. And some days they're going to buy 4 packages of it because they've got friends coming over, and you know what, they can afford it, and that's great. But there's also a need to find the formats and the varieties that still have flavor. They need to taste good, otherwise our kids won't eat them. Otherwise, people won't snack on them in favor over jelly beans or something else that's convenient on their desk. But it needs to be at a price point that the family can bring home, or that person that's feeding. Even if we talk about a younger group of singles, 6 people living in a house together, something like that around university. If you can bring in 2 pounds of tomatoes for a group like that, they're going to go. If they're there, they taste good and they're fresh, it can happen. So that it's a bit of a runaround to your question, Lori, but ultimately we need to work together. We need to hear what consumers are saying, and resources like IRL really help us to understand that. And then we need to look at the dichotomy of, well, we want convenience, we want high flavor, and we need value. And it's not that we can't deliver on all those things, but we need to set the gauges and understand more specifically what is the hierarchy of those things, and what are the goalposts for each of those points that we need to fit in. And that's what narrows our funnel into ultimately what we should be focusing on.
Wonderful. And, as we are in the tail end of the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables, I can say with confidence, the dialogue is up, the interest is up. Speaking from the data that I have access to just through our own proprietary operation at TPM, month after month, we are crushing our previous month's data performance in terms of visitors on site, people who are engaged. So Chad, one final opportunity for you to talk, and then we'll have to close out our discussion. Unfortunately, it's been such a great panel, everyone. Please do remember, we're going to continue the dialogue on the Produce Moms podcast here in the near future, and everything will be available for you all in a replay format. But Chad, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about that. I mean, it's the era of SKU rationalization, private label, like inflation, so many things that are happening. What innovative products are you evaluating at Safeway, at Albertsons?
I think for us, being as grower centric as we are, I think we understand that, it's not as easy as just picking out a new item and we're going to go with it, right? Selecting a new variety in itself from seed to, being able to launch it is a 7-year process at minimum. And as much as I would like to say, hey, grow me the best tomato that's going to taste the best and grow my share, that is such an open-ended, ask for the grower community, right? They're planting thousands of options. The seed, breeders are working on thousands of varieties. It's just to come up with that one every so often. So it's a very simple way to come back to say that, we are able to ask our partners to do uncomfortable things at times, and it's leaning on them in those scenarios to identify these specific items that are going to help us grow categories is kind of what keeps us ahead. If we're reacting and not working alongside the grower partner, the seed companies, as they go through the process, we're already behind the 8 ball, if you will. It's about communicating, working through the process with your partners to ultimately get those wins and those items that our consumers want. If we're moving in the future and it's in a reactionary fashion, we're going to be playing catch up. Again, we use it a lot. It's flavor and partnerships. And if you guys were to be in a meeting amongst ourselves, you guys would hear it enough to probably want to bang your head against the wall at times, but it's what we live by. It's so simple. It's difficult at times. And at the end of the day, it's us relying on the grower, the seed company, and ultimately the consumer to tell us exactly what they want. And if we're trying to assume it for them, we're not doing our part.
Very good. Well, with that, we are out of time. We're certainly not out of discussion or passion on this topic. I want to thank our panelists. You all did a great job. Thank you to the team at Bayer for making this discussion possible. And everyone, it's not over. There is still a lot of time to celebrate the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. So go shop at Albertsons, buy a lot of tomatoes and bell peppers and cucumbers, and make sure that you scan that shopper data so that Johnna can evaluate it. But in all seriousness, we're really glad that you were part of this. Thank you so much to Bayer for fostering this very important conversation. And gentlemen, Johnna, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you all so much.